if you're in a job and you're kind of transitioning out, figure out what's the bare minimum you need to survive every month, and then figure out how much you can get close to that, side hustling, building your thing on the side.
Omar is one of the best business educators in the world, with his podcast, The $100 MBA, getting over 2 million downloads each and every month. And the reason for why I wanted to invite Omar onto this channel is because not only has he started, scaled, but he's also exited successful businesses, including the fast-growing web funnel ninjas. Whether you're a freelancer who is looking to scale and start their own digital agency, or you're currently owning a digital agency, or you may be new to the world of digital marketing and you just want to grow your own business, this interview that I have with Omar really breaks down the core lessons that he's learned so that you can be best prepared for your own business growth journey. I hope you really enjoy this interview that I had with Omar. As I said before, it is an absolute pleasure to have Omar here from the $100 MBA. And I wanted to get Omar on because Omar is, not only has he built multiple businesses and exited multiple businesses, but he also is the host, as I mentioned in the intro, of the $100 MBA. And although obviously in this one, we're going to be talking very much to the prism of freelancers and digital marketers who are looking at starting their own businesses or sort of breaking out. So a lot of these principles are very, very general. And I thought, who better to get on than Omar to talk through some questions that we got. Mate, I want to get straight into it. In your experience, what are the 3 biggest mistakes that people make when they're starting a business?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, and my answers often surprise people. I think a lot of people, I would say the first one, the biggest one that a lot of people make is they are very passionate and very obsessed with their idea, with their product idea or their service idea, whatever it is. It's very hard to be successful if you are married to one idea or a concept. And the people that are successful are either obsessed with an audience, like they love people that, play pickleball and they're into pickleball and they just want to serve that audience, or they're obsessed with the problem that they're trying to solve. And that's really one of the biggest mistakes, because the problem is that your idea may be great today, but tomorrow it could be something that people don't need anymore. For example, I mentioned this in some of my speeches, like, the idea of doing a carbon copy of a credit card was a great idea in the 70s, right? But now everyone wants Apple Pay. So like the idea itself is actually not what you should be aiming for when you're starting a business. You really should be aiming for a problem, a pain point that people have, and you're going to evolve with the solution throughout the years. Or you're very much in love with an audience or a group of people that you're really a part of, a community a part of, and you want to serve them in different ways. So I would say the first one. The second one is pretty boring, but it's what gets people into trouble. It's the economics of their business. They don't really run the numbers enough to know how profitable they are. So people often underestimate how much margin they need in their business. They think, okay, I'm making 20%, 30%. That seems okay. That seems like a lot. And often they say overhead walks on 2 legs. Your costs are going to creep up as you grow. So you need to make sure that your margins are thick enough, that you can actually sustain your business and make enough profit, not only to pay yourself and pay your employees, but also to reinvest in the business. A lot of people don't understand that if you're not reinvesting in your business, it's actually going to be very hard for you to compete with your competitors, with the market. The market's constantly changing, and that's what people don't understand. Like, think of, like, for example, a shopping center in the 80s. The marketplace, what people want and need, is going to be totally different. You see like Sam Goody or a record store like Virgin Records. That stuff doesn't exist anymore, right? Like the market is going to change. So you need to make sure that you adapt with it. So I would say that the numbers and understanding your numbers very well is important. Your cash flow, how much money that's coming in regularly, is very important. And I obsess about it because I've been burnt before because I didn't have strong enough margins in a previous business and learned a lesson hard. So that would be the second one. The third one, usually it's about defining success. A lot of people, they feel like if this business doesn't work, I'm a failure. When I started out in my journey as an entrepreneur, I started side hustling and building businesses on the side in 2002. And I was lucky enough to kind of have a clear intention that like my goal is to be an independent entrepreneur, to be successful as an entrepreneur. I may do that with one business. I may do that with 5 businesses. I may do that with, 7 failures under my belt, but I don't fail. I haven't failed yet until, I quit really.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, they get so hung up on like this business has to work. They kind of feel like all the chips are on the table and they have to like make this happen. One of the hobbies I picked up in the last year is learning how to play poker and playing poker regularly. And one of the things you
Good.
learn about poker is that you can't play not to lose. You got to play to
Yeah.
win. And the difference is that like you can't be afraid to make a bet, to play aggressively, to try to win as possible. Because you know what? If you bust, if you lose that game and you're out,
Yeah.
you can always play tomorrow, right? That's the
Yeah.
beauty of life and business, is that like, even if this idea doesn't work out, even if this business doesn't work out, you're going to learn failure's feedback. And then from there, you can take that learning and you can parlay that into the new thing that you're going to do. And often, a lot of people don't see the failures. A lot of people
Yeah.
look at successful entrepreneurs, or they look at people and they say, oh, wow, they're doing an incredible job and they're super successful. They must be talented. They must be lucky. There's a graveyard of dead ideas and failures that people don't see. So yeah, that's the third one I would say.
Yeah, and I like those 2 and 3s together. I mean, especially when you're saying about number 2. I mean, it's obviously the concept of critical assumptions, like actually knowing the data. And one of the best pieces of advice I got before we started our first business was write down the absolute worst case scenario on a bit of paper. And obviously, I was married at that time, so I said, then go, I'm still married now. Talk to your wife and really go through, like, are you both happy with that? And that really allows you to, I guess, push through, which then leads into that second point of, even if you're losing a couple of hands or losing a couple of things, if you come back to that critical assumption and always know, look, this is the benchmark we're setting. We had already mentally played out for this bad day to happen,
Right.
and it takes away a lot of that stress. So yeah, no, I definitely love all of that. Thanks for that. Hey, what I do want to do is just, obviously, because I'm conscious that a lot of people listening to this are very much going to be in the Google Ads, digital marketing space. And a lot of people listening to this video would align with they're working with an agency and they wanted to break out and become a freelancer, or they're currently a freelancer and they're wanting to go into they want to start their own agency. So I'm going to ask this in 2 ways. So firstly, for that person who's working in a agency on a salary paid position, they may have 1 or 2 clients and they're wanting to break out and go into a freelance or work under their own brand. What is the right time to make that move from a full-time job into working for your business? And are there any metrics that you focus on? Is there any sort of safety nets that you want to have in place? Thank you for watching this interview, which is sponsored by Define Digital Academy. When I started Define Digital Academy, it was with the sole purpose of helping as many businesses and Google Ads specialists to see real success with their Google Ads campaigns. And since we launched back in 2022 from really, really humble beginnings, we've had absolutely thousands of businesses and students reach out for help. And we want to continue this going, and we want to serve you the best way possible. And if you want help with your Google Ads campaigns, and this doesn't matter if you are a new beginner looking at starting your very first Google Ads campaign, or if you're a business who is spending thousands of dollars in their Google Ads campaigns every single month and you need some expert guidance, we are here to help. And so that we can give you the best tools, some of them free, some of them paid, to help you grow your business or your client's business with Google Ads, why don't you follow the link in the description below? And in the description, you'll see a link which is called How Can We Help You? If you follow that link, it'll take you through a really, really short 2-minute questionnaire where we can get the right information, whether it's one of our courses, whether it's one of our communities, or whether it's some of our expert boutique coaching and mentoring programs. We've got everything covered, once again, from the beginner to the most experienced, to help you with your Google Ads results. Thank you again. Let's head back to the interview.
Those metrics, the timeline, everything depends on what you're willing to do. So I'll share my own example. I was a teacher for over a decade in high school and university level. I got to the point where I got so frustrated because I was, acting chair of my department. I wasn't getting the promotion after doing the job for over 18 months. And I had a chat with my boss. I said, hey, are you, it was the dean of the university. I said, hey, do you think I'm doing a great job? And she was like, yeah, you're doing a fantastic job. And I was like, so why haven't I officially got this promotion? What's happening here? It's been 18 months, it's been a year and a half. And she was like, I got to level with you. The director of the university wants to make an outside hire for this. And in that moment, I felt really disempowered. I felt like I don't have control over my future. Somebody else is making decisions for me and I need to take control. And I thought anything is better than this. And in that moment, my frustration outgrew my fear. And I had to make a decision. Listen, I was on a great salary. I had all the luxuries that I always wanted, a nice car, beautiful house, all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And I knew in that moment I'm going to need to start over. I knew I needed to sacrifice.
Yeah.
And my parents are immigrants. They came from Egypt to the U.S. and we didn't grow up with much. We were very humbly middle class. We had the bare essentials. My parents were very economically aware. That's
Yeah.
a nice way to say that they were cheap. And so I was, kind of making up for lost time when I had a good salary
Yeah.
and kind of, living it up. So I had to go back to the ramen days. Had to go back, and my recommendation to you is to tailor your finances. If you are in a family, if you have a wife or
Yeah.
even an extended family, somebody living with you, children, whatever it might be, have a family meeting and say, hey,
Yeah.
I want to change things up here.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little bit challenging the next year or two. And what I did is I wanted to increase my runway or my chance to kind of start my business and not need to pay all these high bills. So I had to reduce
Yeah.
my expenses.
Yeah.
I moved to a city that didn't require, I went maybe a little bit too extreme. Maybe this is too much for people, but I went to a city that didn't require a car, sold my car, took mass transit. Basically, I paid my rent and cooked my own food, and we just kind of kept it bare minimum as possible,
Yeah.
canceled all my, subscriptions, all that kind of stuff. So instead of me spending $8,000 a month, I was spending like, $3,500 a month. Now that is really good if you have a chunk of savings. Say for example, your runway is like $50,000 or $60,000. Okay, now that lasts for a year or
Yeah.
so. I can get on my feet and start building a business and not feel like I'm going to starve in the next 2 or 3 months. So the better you can lower your expenses, the better that you can reconstruct your life and just kind of see it as a temporary setback. I knew when I sold my car that this is temporary. I'm going to have a better car in the future. Right? I'm going to have the best car I ever wanted in my life.
Yeah.
But right now, I need to humble myself and I need to kind of lower my expectations a little bit so that I can have a little bit more freedom when it comes to building my business. So if you're in a job and you're kind of transitioning out, figure out what's the bare minimum you need to survive every month, and then figure out how much you can get close to that, side hustling, building your thing on the side. I personally have not seen this successfully done where people like my income got replaced while I was doing this part-time while I'm on a full-time job. Part-time efforts give you part-time results. It's just how it is. But you can use the law of ratios. So you could say, okay, hey, I'm putting in 10 hours here and I'm making $3,000 a month on the side with my job. Pretty sure if I put in 20, 30 hours, 40 hours, I can kind of make up my salary. So, and at the end of the day, some people have a high risk tolerance. Some people are like, hey, I'm going to like cut the cord and go for it. And I'm going to bet on myself. And some people have a very low risk. You got to know yourself and you got to know your family and you got to know who's involved, who's going to be, a part of this experience. It could be a loved one, it could be your partner in life, and make sure that you're on the same kind of page when it comes to that. So that's my advice.
No, I love that. And look, I'm happy to share that the reason I've got to know Omar is we're in a mastermind together. That's the first time I've heard that. So, and my story is very much very, very similar in that we were working for a pharmaceutical company, had a good wage, company car, all those things. We made those decisions. Like even now, I still can't eat a chicken nugget because there's been a period of like 3 months where we were building our business and everything was going into it. That's all we could really eat was chicken nuggets and vegetables and stuff like that. And it's but I come back to I think one thing I'll really pick up there is that the risk tolerance. And I think one of the messages I really want to give people as well is that growing your own business is not for everyone. And also at the same time, if you talk to the family, so maybe let's just break into if you were to talk to your extended family, I mean, obviously, I don't think this works if your partner is not on board. I mean, did you get any pushback from other like extended family members or friends, or you sort of got support throughout the whole process?
Well, to be honest with you, I just kind of did it without telling anybody other than Nicole, who was, my partner at the time. And I just kind of made it happen. And I kind of shut out everybody in a way that I just was laser focused on trying to make this work, trying to be independent as an entrepreneur, trying to make my next sale. And I did it because I couldn't afford any self-doubt. I couldn't
Yeah.
afford any kind of critical feedback that might be helpful, but at the same time, it could allow me to kind of feel like, oh, maybe I'll just pick up a job. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I
Yeah.
do that, because your loved ones, your parents or whatever,
Yeah.
they're going to just give advice based on their fear of you not doing well, not being
Yeah.
healthy, not being able to, put food on the table. They want to play it safe. And I have empathy for that. So instead of
Yeah.
me trying to go back and forth, I just kind of kept my distance a little bit and just stayed focused. And, I checked up with my parents or whatever,
Yeah.
every so often, but I just tell them I'm fine. I'm going to be all right. And that's it.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. So I think the biggest thing to sort of wrap up from that section is really looking to cut costs where you can. And it comes back to that first point of saying just knowing your margins and knowing your numbers, because the last thing that you want to see happen is that you're pulling out every little bit of revenue that comes into your business to afford your lifestyle. You have to have that buffer inside of your business. Now let's talk about for people who have made that decision and they go, yep, this is a path I want to progress. Are there any, I guess, insights or recommendations you could give around daily activities and mind stops that stop people from being able to scale a business? So let's first start on the mindset. Is there any reframing or things you've had to keep a focus on in order to really allow you to scale a business?
This is a good question because mindset it precedes action. What you believe is what you do. And one of the things that I learned the hard way in my journey that I would recommend to people is understand who you are today is not enough for you to be where you want to go in the future. This means you're going to constantly change. You're going to constantly improve. I look back at Omar 10 years ago. I don't recognize this person. It's a different person.
Yep.
So you got to be comfortable with that. You have to be comfortable with the fact that I have to grow. That means I'm constantly uncomfortable. Like I'm constantly doing things outside my comfort zone. I'm doing things that stretch me. You start to get used to it over time. But the point here is that you don't realize what you don't know until you hit a wall. And every time I've been in a business, like for example, in my software business, WebinarNinja for 10 years, anytime I hit a plateau, I realize, okay, what I bring to the table in the business is not enough. I need to skill up. I need to improve. I need to push myself. I need to do things that maybe I've been afraid of, whether it's hiring somebody that is smarter than me or doing the work that I've been avoiding or, doing a new kind of marketing strategy, whatever it might be. So you constantly have to reinvent yourself in a lot of ways. This is why I think that entrepreneurs in a lot of ways have parallels with musicians, with artists, because an artist will get to a certain level and then, they'll have a best-selling album. It's incredible. And then how do they follow that up? Well, they have to become something new and create something new. So just having that mindset of understanding that, like, even if things are going well right now and your business is at a certain level, who you are as a person, what you believe, what you do, how you lead your team, the things that you prioritize will change in order for you to move on. Because what you need in the next level is not what you're doing right now, because otherwise you'd be in the next level already.
No.
So that's
it's funny. I remember when I was working in a company, they had this motivational speaker come through, and he said he wanted to meet a commission for a year. This was going back 20, 25 years ago. But he said there's one thing that stuck with me, and that was that he thought about earning this level of doing $1 million in commission a year would be the goal, but he actually realized it was the person that he had to, all the changes he had to make to be able to become that person to achieve that money level. And I 100% agree with everything you're saying. Like I look back in my own journey as well. I'm completely different to where I was 5-10 years ago. I'm even recognizing some things in my own business that we want to pivot to now. Like I've got to change to go to the next level again. And so it's, but it's also too, I think that's where you got to make that stop and you go like, where I am now, am I comfortable with that? Because if you're comfortable with that, there's nothing wrong with that. But just understanding that the byproduct of setting up camp where you're comfortable means that's the level you're going to stay at. Nothing wrong with that, but you've got to make that decision as to whether you want to continue pushing through. All right, I love what you said about mindsets. Now let's go into, are there any sort of practical daily activities that have helped you in terms of, so we could be talking about anything here, like scheduling your daily routine, what are some things, this will be different for each people, but what are some things that have helped you personally?
I think consistency is one of the most underrated skills in life, let alone business or anything you're trying to achieve. I look back at anything I've been successful at, and there's probably a through line of something that I was very consistent with.
Yeah.
So, for example, I run a podcast called the $100 MBA Show. We've been running this podcast for nearly 11 years. It'll be 11 years in August. We have over 300 million downloads. It's been a very popular top business podcast for a very long time, won Best of iTunes. But all of that doesn't happen by accident. Like a lot of people look at me like, how are you successful? You've been running a business for 10 years. You're running this podcast for 10 years. And my answer is, if I wasn't successful after 10 years, there's something wrong with me. Like, like the fact that I was that consistent, or I am that consistent, I don't attribute it to my knowledge, my smart brain or something like that. My charisma, I don't attribute it to any of that stuff. It's because I have enough iterations. I have enough time for me to do an episode, get better, improve upon it. I can't listen to my first 100, 200 episodes because they're cringeworthy. And that's good because it means I've improved. It means that I started as early as possible when I wasn't ready. They say if you don't have cringeworthy work, you started too late. So consistency is huge. So you got to be consistent. Too many people, they jump around and they don't really make any progress or get any traction anywhere. So choose one or two things in your business that, like, I'm known for this. Like, for example, for me, it's podcasting. I'm known for being very consistent, making sure that I'm delivering high quality episodes every single time. That's my thing, that I try to improve every single time. My other thing is I'm a teacher by trade. I have a master's in education, but that's what I do on the podcast. I teach business lessons. So I try to get better and better at explaining complex ideas into short, format type of episodes. So try to be as consistent. I don't even like saying as consistent as possible. You're either consistent or not consistent. I used to teach classroom management when I was in education, and I used to ask the teachers, hey, are you consistent with your discipline in class, or are you inconsistent? And they say, I'm consistent sometimes. There's no such thing as sometimes. No. You're then inconsistent, right? So my advice is, the thing about consistency is that it's hard to lose when you're constantly chipping away, getting better, doing it over and over and over, despite the outcome. This is the most important thing. A lot of people, they work on something, they don't like the outcome, and they're like, okay, that didn't get me any sales, that didn't get me any leads, forget it. No, it just means you're not good at it yet, right? It just means you need to keep at it, and just be in love with the practice, be in love with the consistency, and eventually you're going to get the result you're looking for.
Well, I know that's true, especially in, on this medium where we are in YouTube. I've never spoken to a YouTuber who has any level of success with YouTube that absolutely did well in the first 50 episodes. And for some of them, like I remember I was at a conference last year with Colin and Samir. They showed their trend line of their their channel. It was 5 years of flat line, and then it just skyrocketed. And I know, like in my channel as well, where the first when we started, it was flat line, and then it was seemingly like overnight, it just skyrocketed. And too many people stop before they see that massive increase. I think it was, I'm going to phrase what he said wrong, but Alex Hormozy, he might have been quoting someone else at this thing, is find the activities in your business that will make money, and then do the volume to the extreme that there's no way that you can't be a success in 10 years from now. And I think that's what you're echoing there, is it's just find out what is the drivers of the business, and then just commit to the process that you're going to be showing up and doing this, even if you're not seeing the results straight away.
100%.
Yeah. All right. I do want to change gears a little bit here, because a lot of the reason for people wanting to start a business, especially if they're wanting to start an agency, is they're eventually looking to exit that business. Now, this may seem like a funny thing to be talking about to people who are wanting to start a business, but I do know that if you don't have structural things right and you're not thinking about that, even if it's 10 years from now, you can make a lot of mistakes. So if someone eventually wants to grow a business in order to sell it, you've obviously had an exit from the WebinarNinjas. What do they need to start doing now to not only make that process easier, but make it a potential something that can happen, but also increase the profits for that sale?
Yeah, I would say the first step is changing the way you think about your business. In the beginning, a lot of people come from a job and they start a business, and they see their business as a way to make money, the way to fund their lifestyle, to be able to do that. And that's fine. That's the stage you're in, and that's okay. But if you're looking to exit your business, you need to look at your business as a entity by itself, an asset you're trying to build, an asset that is attractive to a buyer, right? Just like if you were going to buy a house, your own house, and you're thinking about selling it one day, that's an asset that you want to kind of make sure that, okay, what are people looking for? They want to make sure that, the finishings are nice and that the insulation is done well and, the lawn looks beautiful and all that kind of stuff. You're thinking about, as a buyer, building an asset that actually
Yeah.
is attractive, rather than you trying to say, oh, I want a comfortable, cozy home for myself, right?
Yeah.
So having said that, changing your mindset, you're going to start seeing things where you're like, okay, who would buy my business? And
Mm.
one of the things I actually did as an exercise was I listed all the types of businesses that would buy my business, or people that would buy my business. And often there's two different kinds of sales. There is a financial sale where people actually just buy your business because of how much money it's making, the recurring revenue and all that kind of stuff. And that's fine. And you can get a good multiple on that. And it's totally okay. There's somebody who's outside this world and they're just trying, hey, I love this business, I want to buy it.
Yeah.
But a strategic sale is a lot more lucrative from the seller's point of view. This is when another company is buying your company because it's a strategy move for them. They want to be able to, one, compete with their competitors. They want to buy it before somebody else
Yeah.
buys it. They want to kind of plug in your business into their business and sell it to their current customers. It's basically an easier way for it to leverage your value, because now they're not thinking just about the revenue. They're thinking about how it plays in the market. So think about, who are these people? And it's okay to be friends with your competitors, because your competitors could be the person that buys you. Okay. So that's one of the things I learned. The other thing that's incredibly important is documentation. You need to document everything about your business. One of the things that we did was absolutely painful as a process. We had a coach that coached us, Dan Martell. We were part of his program for a few years. And one of the things he really stresses is standard operating procedures and preparing for an exit. What that means is literally, how do you do anything? So like, for example, do you meet with your team on a daily basis? How does that meeting go? What's the process? What's the minutes look like? Documenting it as if you were going to hand it over and get somebody else to do this meeting, right? For us as a software company, we had to document every granular thing. Sometimes we did it through a text doc or like a Google Doc, and sometimes we shot videos. It was very complex. Like, for example, how do we deploy code? How do we comment code? How do we do unit testing? How do we fix bugs? How do we pick up bug tickets from our software and communicate it back to the support team when it's fixed, and all that kind of stuff? How do we QA? Every single thing you run in your business, it's almost like you're creating like a playbook, a manual for every process. It's almost like you seem like, oh, this is kind of a given. This is easy. Why would anybody need? No. When somebody's buying your company and they see this, that increases the value. Why? Because it means that they can make money faster. They don't need to take 18 months to figure out how you run your business. And it's better for you as the seller, because then you don't have to invest for that long. You don't have to be part of that company and be in, work for them for 2 years or so. If your documentation is done really well, then you can have a minimal vesting time, a few months, and you can consult if they have any questions. So I would say granular documentation about every single thing you do. When people hear this, the first thing they say is, oh, where am I going to get the time to do this? Well, the first thing you need to do is you just need to document the process. So like, how do you want this documented? So I literally would shoot a video where it says, okay, let's take a look at this process in customer support. I'm going to write down each step. This is what we're going to do. And then I hand it over to somebody on my team and say, hey, I want you to do this for every single thing that you do in support. And come back to me in a week and see what you got. And then I'll review it. Okay, this looks good. Or no, change this. And then I'll be like, okay, there's some other stuff we forgot. How about these things? So you can get your team to kind of document for you, but you need to kind of set the tone and set the structure.
And I would assume there too, I mean, one of the benefits of doing that really early in the business, even if you're not even thinking about selling 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, whatever that path may be, is that if you've got all your processes documented, if a staff member leaves, your staff training becomes much easier. If you were to have a health or something like that you needed to take, a couple of months off, you've got the systems there that it's not going to be as bad to change employees and also run without you in the business for a little while.
Yeah, we had SOPs for like support, for example, and then on a team retreat, we got our engineers to answer live customer support tickets using our SOPs. And the exercise was not to follow the SOPs, but the exercise was more for the engineers to have a little bit of empathy for the support team and realize, oh, wow, our customers really, like, they're not super techie. Like they need things really simply done.
Yeah, no, that's great. Hey, we're going to finish up with two more questions. First one, maybe a shorter one, but if you had your time again, going back to the start of Webinar Ninja, I mean, is there anything you would change or any lessons learned that you go, oh, I wish I had done that differently?
So my journey with WebinarNinja was 10 years. This is a tough question because I thought about this a lot. My initial reaction is not much. I don't think I would
Yeah.
change much because I knew what I knew back then. The only thing, if I really give it deeper thought, would be, I would say for the first 3 to 4 years, I saw it as a way to fund my lifestyle, a way for me to be able to earn income and grow assets
Yeah.
in my own life. But I changed my mindset and thought, okay, wait a minute. There's a chance here where I can build some value in this business, sell it one day, and then not need to work ever again. And that mindset, I wish I kind of had earlier on. I think I would make different decisions if that was the
Yeah.
case. The other thing is that when you change that mindset, you start to think bigger. You start to think, okay, when you're just building a business for your lifestyle, you're like, okay, I want to make X amount of revenue.
Yeah.
Maybe some people are like, $30,000 a month. Oh, that would be incredible. I can go on all the vacations I want and have a good time and live in the house I want, all that kind of stuff. But when you start thinking about, I want to build an asset that is making over $7 million in revenue or profit or whatever it might be, then you're thinking bigger numbers. How can I get more customers? How can I, all that. You start thinking outside your comfort zone. You start growing your mindset a little bit. And it's better to do that earlier on because then you're going to start building a business and building a product based on that.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, the last one, this is going to change. I said changing gears, but we definitely are changing topics with this one. Obviously, there's been a massive increase and rise in AI tools, and now with AI agents coming in.
Right.
In your head, is there anything or in your thoughts, is there anything that business owners, especially in the digital marketing space, that the rise of AI agents, things they need to be doing now or growing or embedding into their business so that they're not left behind in the coming weeks, months, or years?
I think that AI is a great tool for the business owner more than the actual customer. So like before you start changing your product or changing things that you're offering your customers, maybe your customers don't want it. You don't know yet.
Yeah.
Like you need to make sure that you tread softly before you kind of mess up your value prop. But I think that AI is a great tool, as you could see them as like an advisor, as a co-founder, as somebody that you can just ask any question you have about something you're trying to test or something you're trying to do in your business, or maybe a new product line, or maybe you're trying to improve a piece of copy or whatever it might be. See them as somebody that maybe invested in your company, like a Shark Tank, like a Mark Cuban character, and you just want to be able to give this person a call and ask them for their advice. I think AI is great at that because it gets you outside of your head. It gets your ideas out. It gets you to kind of feed it what you're thinking. Sometimes our thoughts in our head mean something different when it's just in our head. But once we put it out there, write it out, sometimes the solutions kind of manifest themselves. This is why I love to journal. I think journaling is a very good exercise, even with AI and all that kind of stuff. It's good to just write things down because then you start seeing patterns and the things that you complain about, things that you have problems with. And you're like, okay, maybe I need to start working on this stuff. But just getting your ideas out and just having a chat with somebody like, an AI to say, hey, I'm considering, changing my business model. I'm considering, changing my pricing and doing X, Y, Z, da, 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 da. Can you give me some statistics, any research on other companies that have done this and tell me if it was successful or what moves I should make or some things I should consider? How could this go wrong? I always ask this question to AI, like, here's my idea, da, 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 and I'm really like passionate about it, but how could this idea go wrong? So I can be aware of the things that could go wrong.
That's great. Hey, Omar, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. For anyone watching or listening to this, if you go down to the show notes, I'm going to have links on where you can find Omar and the $100 MBA. Mate, absolute pleasure having you here, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Aaron. I really appreciate it.